fair amount of time. You've known her much longer, and you've had a very close relationship with her. And I believe before we start this, you want to read a statement from her first, and then we'll get into the questions. So I'll throw that over to you, and you read this statement from Auntie Bev first. We'll go from there.
I would, and this is from Auntie Bev's, what she's written down, and she wrote with me, like I've helped her, and I've got a folder on my desktop with her words. This is how I want to start this. Firstly, I'd also really like to pay my respects and acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, which is Guring-gai land, where we are. It's not Duck and Jung. Duck and Jung is the land council, and Auntie Bev was a Duck and Jung woman. They were the people, and they walked hand in hand with the Guring-gai, and then to the north we have the Awabakal, and then the Durrock down the Hawkesbury River, where we're surrounded by all of this. And they all used to work together until white men and our government and our land council decided to change everything to suit them. And so I feel Auntie Bev's anger and frustration, and she's passed, but she's with me, she nudges me, and we even had the cockatoo landing just before. Yes. One cockatoo, because that is her totem, and what she initiated me into. One cockatoo that turned up. It's just after you arrived, and I feel like the blessing's there. So I'll start with this. My tribal name is Goolabeen. I am a fully initiated law and medicine woman of the Aliwera tribe of Utopia from the central deserts of Australia. But I am better and more widely known as Auntie Bev, particularly in the jails of New South Wales, where I have just retired after 29 years working with Aboriginal prisoners, being there for them 24/7 as an elder, an Aboriginal art and culture teacher, a suicide counsellor, and a mental health worker. As I was born here in Woy Woy, New South Wales, 78 years ago, when she wrote this, that was 10 years ago, I speak as an elder of the Duck and Jung tribe from the central coast of New South Wales. And today I speak on behalf of all Central Coast Aboriginal women with the support of the Aboriginal men and many non-Aboriginal people who knew of the importance of preserving the sacred Aboriginal dreaming tracks. I, as an initiated woman, wish to explain the importance of the site so that all Australians can understand how important it is for this site to be preserved and not destroyed. I would like to acknowledge that Black history and culture is recorded and taught in ways that are different from the white fella's ways, but are no less important to its people. White Australia has a Mitchell Library, given, funded and maintained by the government to house all your important papers, records, books, events, stories and artefacts. At the Mitchell Library, all your white history is kept safe from vandalism, kept safe for posterity. We, the original custodians of this land, had no paper, pens or writing equipment like yours to record our history on. Instead, back then, we used our recall, our memory, to retell our stories and the law and to re-sing our songline of what came before us, what needed to be passed down, carried on, down through time for posterity, just like the white man's ways. Our people also had the dedication and patience to carve these stories and laws into hard rock platforms, to build entire sites that record our history, our culture and our stories, where we hoped they would be preserved for posterity. Every symbol or line we carved may have taken months to complete, but how else were we to permanently record for our children and their children the stories, the lore, and the history of the original custodians of this land? And this area is full of such sites. It has very great significance in telling our history, how we lived here as humans and as hunters and gatherers, as custodians of the land, how we evolved and what roles we played in life. The dreaming track must never be broken. Its ancient history cannot be lost. It is our Mitchell Library, and like yours, it must be saved for posterity. Lose it, and it is gone forever, and that would be a shameful blight on the history of this land. As the elder and woman of high degree, we taught every young girl initiate our sacred oral history, word for word, brushstroke by brushstroke, just as we had been taught, so that they in turn could also pass it down to their children as it had been passed down to them. This was important ceremonial practice, our way of passing our history down through the ages. This was part of our great survival pattern. It is not right that Her Majesty's New South Wales Government allow a company to stop the Darkinjung and the Guring-gai people from practicing its ancient culture and for building on top of such an important place. The sacred archaeology of this entire area must be preserved and its black history acknowledged and respected. Auntie Beve. And this would have been 2013, I'm not sure, when we did the rocket thing. So
that was her statement.
That's what I've been taking bits out because she goes on and on. Auntie Beve took on anyone that tried to, and she's still taking them on through me.
Now, Nina, you and I were at a ceremony Auntie Bev gave at the grandmother tree not long before she passed on, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Would you like to explain to people why Auntie Bev chose the grandmother tree? Because you know and I know we've got original people running around saying it's a fake and it's a tourist trap, haven't we?
Yeah.
So I think we do need to address that. Why did she choose that place to give us that very important ceremony, wasn't it? Why do you think she chose that place, and why was that ceremony so important?
Yes. And those people that say it's not aren't even traditional custodians of this land.
Yeah.
Those who are saying all this are not from this country. They didn't learn all the stories of this country.
No.
Auntie Bev told me so many stories of places and caves and things that she had to go through. There was only one woman that was alive then, because as you know, they were all wiped out in this area. Captain Phillip came in here after he first arrived. This was where he came in. This was where the smallpox first started getting into people, well, possibly down Sydney, but I think this played a big part up here on the coast. Yeah. Auntie Bev knew that tree was a tree where the stories were told, where the women would sit and the children would come and they would share their stories, and the youth. It was a very important tree, and it still is, and it survives us. And we can feel it. There's been poetry written to it, there's been paintings and art. It's been going through from far back. And Auntie Bev told us that's where she wanted to do the ceremony with us.
Yes, she did.
Because she worked so closely, Steve, with you and us. I came along on this, I had no idea what I was doing in amongst all of this. You know, I came down from those stars up there in 1947, early, straight after the Holocaust, the worst genocide that was possible then. And all my family were killed in that genocide, but my parents survived. I ended up in Australia, but I knew from when I was so young that I'm not from this earth. I'm on this earth, but I'm not from it. I knew my stars. I used to wave to them when I was a little kid. And I'm in my 77th year of life and I still do. And they still flicker and call me. I know exactly who I am. I know exactly what my role is here. So, but I didn't know when I first found the site up there, I didn't understand my reasoning for being here. And it was in 95 that somebody just turned up, and somehow through a whole series of events, I ended up there at the glyphs. Not many people knew about them then. You did, because you'd already been up on that country.
Yeah.
It was in your book, and that's how I connected with you. But Auntie Beve, even though I knew her and I'd seen her, I did not know her closely. I did not know her story. I did not know who she was until we were fighting to save that land up there. Until we called you and you came back to do everything in your power to help protect that land, and you're still doing it. And that was in, my goodness, how long ago did we save that land up there?
A long time ago.
You know, it became National Park.
Mm.
You know, if Jake hadn't intervened, if Jake hadn't have run for government and got so many votes at between the Liberal and Labor Party, they knew that Jake's votes would make a difference, which one was going to get in and which one wasn't. It was so close. So, Auntie Bev, from when you started coming here, and this place of mine became like a headquarters, and this tribe of people were called together, and you walked on that country, and she knew from the minute you arrived, she was here. She gave permission. At the end of the day, she was here so that you could let her know everything that you'd found.
Exactly.
all the way through, all those years. She was there.
Can I talk about one particular
Yes,
time when
I remember this engraving we had, and we're all looking at it, and we couldn't work out what the hell it was. And Auntie Bev came in and said, "You stupid people, you're holding it upside down," and we spun it around the other way. Well, we all knew what it was straight away.
Yeah.
She was our guide, wasn't she?
Yeah.
When we went into country, I get really annoyed when I hear that Lands Council said they gave ceremony. That made me cringe. We went, and I want to make the point that we couldn't even see when we were looking at something. Well, that's why you need an elder like that. We looked at it upside down. You remember that, don't you?
Oh yeah, it was completely upside down.
And we had no idea, and she just turned around. We just felt like kindergarten children,
Yeah.
which we were. We were kindergarten children with a teacher that knew everything about this land, didn't she?
Oh,
She knew all the
I haven't
sites,
even
didn't she?
touched on stuff that she's told me about. Up on the Hawkesbury, up at Wiseman's, like the places.
Kinshamba.
Yet part of her initiation was to go into these caves that she was told and spend days down there.
Mm.
And places that you'd never find. She was going to take me to a couple of them.
Yeah.
And the story she's told me, that she knew this land better than anybody. And she would fight for this land and stand up for this land. And you know, if it wasn't for Auntie Colleen now, who's Duck and Jung,
Mm-hmm.
part Duck and Jung, and you, and Auntie Bev sort of passed over to her
Yes, she
as
said
an
that.
elder. Auntie
Yeah.
Colleen does this now.
Mhm.
And she's copying heaps, just like Auntie Bev did.
She's
And
getting
you
it.
should see, I got some letters here from the Land Council that she wrote to them, really taking them on big time, because of the way they were talking to her, treating her, and what they were trying to override. And that was the beginning of all that's happening now, where they're trying to call this place a name that never even existed.
Mm.
The J never, all of that. But Auntie Beth recognised, acknowledged, and told us the story of the grandmother tree and its importance.
And can I add something to that people may not fully understand? When she gave that ceremony, she announced that she was going to do the Song of the Four Winds. Right? Now I knew, I'd heard about that ceremony, and it's spoken of in whispered tones. It is one of the most important ceremonies that's ever given. I heard stories about the Berinian people, how the little people up near Cairns, and whenever all the tall people would fight, they'd go and ask them for wisdom. and they could only give the wisdom after they first sung that song. And people didn't know how important that song was when it was done, because most people wouldn't have done that research. That song was a proper ceremony given at the grandmother tree, and what she gave is she gave the people there the right to speak on her behalf, didn't she? That was the whole point of it. Maybe to an extent, maybe intrinsic, she knew her time was running short.
Yes.
You can never tell with her, and I think she did that to make sure that she passed that on to yourself, myself, Evan, and there was a few others there at the
There
time.
were a few.
Yeah, there were a few others there.
All
And-
those who worked on trying to
Yes,
save that land.
and we were asked to protect the land. I don't remember any member of the Lands Council being part of that meeting.
No.
Therefore, I don't believe they have a right to say they gave the place ceremony, because they do not know the ceremony, because only Beve kept it. And if they were to give the Song of the Four Winds, I would then say to them, I would defer to them and say, okay, if you've got the right to sing that, you can do it. But they didn't do that.
Never forget that Song of the Four Winds.
No.
That was the only time ever in all my years of working with lots of Aboriginal communities, that was the first time and last time I've ever been
Exactly.
there when she actually did
Yeah,
that.
and that's very important. We talk about that because it gives her
Yeah.
that real authenticity that others claim to have, but they don't have the right. And then maybe you might like to explain to people, when Bev went to the middle to do ceremonies, they weren't these normal ceremonies where someone smokes you once and says good things to you and walk away. It wasn't like that, was it?
Oh, no.
Could you explain to people the
No.
ceremony she did?
Because, like, what do they call the thing that she had the leaves in, the not called?
Cool.
Yeah, Coolman. Is that what
Yeah,
they
Coolman
carried
dish.
to Coolman, yeah.
Yeah.
And she did it in there because when she was, we've got some beautiful photos, she allowed that, she wanted that.
Mm.
She wanted that where it's not often captured, but she knew that was important. And when she's doing it, all the smoke, she already had that smoking happening right beside her, because you can see in the photos where her hands are coming up, the smoke is all over and around her as she's doing that ceremony. And as she called to each one, and ooh, and she did some, oh my, give me goosebumps just
Yeah, I
to think
remember
about it.
I remember it.
But she did, and I don't think any of us will ever forget it, how every one of us were all
Marked up.
smudged,
Yeah, we're all marked up.
marked, smudged, and she was right in the zone, and I find that's probably one of the most amazing experiences that I can ever remember.
And the important part of this is, Nina, that she told us, and she spoke specifically about the glyphs on occasion. I remember we did an interview a long time ago with her and David Fitzgerald, and she told us,
Right here.
they were sitting right where you are now, they were sitting there, we did that interview then, and she told us, and this was a very important thing, and she hadn't told us this before, because like most elders, they tell you things when you're ready to hear it. She told us that there was Egyptian writing there, but then she told us there was writing that was much older that belonged to the original people.
Yeah.
So when you talk about, when she talks about the Mitchell Library, we do have records.
Ah,
We do have records. We have written records on that wall. And we have them on so many rocks, so many platforms, and none of this, like I went yesterday, myself, Evan, Shane and Leo, we went to Manly. And we went around there and there were really sacred engravings there. And do you know what was on top of them? Bike marks, track marks writing right over the top of it
and
everywhere.
they're starting up at Kariong too.
Oh, there are. Oh, I know. There's bikes riding through Kariong doing exactly the same thing. Why I mentioned that. So we have a situation now where Auntie Beve has authenticated the glyphs as being legitimate, and now we've got members of Lands Council telling them they're graffiti and they should be destroyed. In fact, I think, Evan, is this not correct? We have a statement, a written statement, which we have a copy of, where they threatened that they will be destroying it soon. Is that correct?
Yep.
They've made that threat. They've made the threat they intend to destroy the whole thing. And I think, I'm going to say the person because it's true, Gabby Tunker has been on national radio saying he wants it destroyed.
Yeah.
How do you think Auntie Beve would feel about the people who said that?
If Auntie Beve was alive now,
Yes.
in spirit, I feel her anger and frustration and
Mm.
the fact that I tell you what, there's no way she would be sitting back and letting this. She would have been right there. She would be breaking down doors in government. Well, we don't even have a council
No,
to
you
go
don't,
to
no.
now.
You have a
And we
dictator.
haven't for 4 years.
Mm.
We have not been able to go to anybody who represents us. So it's so illegal the way this whole thing's been happening. And I think I'm disgusted. I'm sure Auntie Bev is too. And
Would
that's-
Auntie Bev chain herself up against the gate if
Oh
she
my God, she would. I remember her driving around when we were doing the Calga, like the Calga Women's Fertility Songline. That was her last big one. You
Yeah,
know,
I remember that one.
I remember driving around with her and she's saying, see these chains? She went out and she got these special chains which cost a lot of money, but nothing can cut them. She was very proud of
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah, they're
Oh,
made
she was
out,
going to chain herself
they're
up
made out of
proper.
something that you could not even cut her off it.
Oh, jeez.
And that was with great pride she showed me those. And she called the women down, because this was the fertility songline, not far from there in Calga, that was going to be destroyed. We won that one too, thank goodness. But it was after that she got really sick and then she died. Well, she didn't get sick, she fell and she died.
Yeah.
But we won it, and she would chain herself. And I think Colleen said Aunt Colleen said she was going to get herself done too. But what happened was, all these women were coming down from Queensland, all these Aboriginal women from everywhere, because this was such an important fertility songline, that they were all planning and they were going to tie themselves to, and the Land Council intervened and really made big trouble. And that was Sean Gordon, and I'll say that name straight out, and he intervened, he stopped it, he made it so difficult for that to happen. Luckily, we still won it, but that's what they were prepared to do. They had to stop the women from coming down, etc.
Yes, Sean Gordon.
Sean Gordon,
Yes.
and then of course J.D. Duncan, the other Duncan who was there. He's gone. A lot of these have gone. They're all Gamilaroi. They're not even from this area.
I know. Gabby Duncan, I taught at Moree.
Yeah, Gamilaroi.
I know he's Gamilaroi.
Yeah, no, they're not even from this area.
So what we've got now is we've got a situation now. We've got some Guring-gai people are still with us.
Oh, and they're growing.
They're growing
Because
and they're
Tracey
getting
Howie
strong.
was
Yeah, I
the
know.
only
Yeah.
one that was standing up
Mhm.
for the Guring-gai. You know, direct descendant of Bungaree. She went through so much hell on her own. She was booted from here and told they didn't exist, and the stuff she put. And I think eventually she just went, oh, yeah, what's the point? They didn't have a land council. They didn't have any legal rights because they're not a land council. And so what's happening now, though, they're rising. Goring-gai coming out. They're all standing up. I went down for a big ceremony on the beach at Copacabana only a couple of weeks ago for the new moon ceremony, and they're all Goring-gai people, and it was just as it was.
So there's still hope here.
I really felt that when I saw there was 80 or 90 people down there, and they were doing the dance, and they were the traditional, real ones, the real ones.
So I'm going to close with this question, and I'd like you to speak on behalf of Auntie Bev again. What would our Auntie Bev's vision for the future of Kariong and the Glyphs be? What do you think she would want to see happen?
I think she'd want it to be left as it is. I think what we need, and I think Auntie Bev would want that all the money that Land Council has made to build some sort of a cultural centre here on the coast that people can go to, can learn the stories, can see pictures and photos and artwork of engravings and all that lives here, because nobody knows. There is nothing. And so she would like it to be left, and for the traditional custodians to take walks through that area and to show and tell the stories of this place.
And basically that's exactly what Auntie Colleen said earlier.
Did she?
Yes, she did. She talked about that. She wanted a house built there so someone could protect it full time, because we know it's been destroyed and vandalised.
Oh, look what they're doing.
And we do also know, we've mentioned this yesterday and we'll mention again, if anyone tells me that some of those glyphs haven't been destroyed, because we know some have been destroyed. If they haven't caused so much damage to that place and so much grief, they're wrong. The place has been severely damaged, badly damaged. And what scares me a lot is when that work took place, there was no supervisor to watch it, no archaeologist to say, you can't cover up that cliff at the bottom. They've covered it up by big time. It's one of the biggest cliffs there. These people were workmen. They knew nothing that was taking place. And I know what they did was basically they sent people there from kindergarten to look after a university, and they didn't know what they were doing. They trashed the place. And the place is now in a very bad state of repair. And Auntie Bev, I know, is not happy about this.
No.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you, Nina. Is there any last comment you'd like to make about what's happened now and what you think we could help when nothing else seems to be working at the moment? What's your take on this?
Look, I personally, having been involved since '95, I think it's a fair while, and seeing the new people that live here who are all custodians of this land, and that is one thing that the Guring-gai say in all their ceremonies. We are all custodians of this land. We are all now responsible for what's happening here, to protect it and look after it.
Can I stop with that? And I'm going to use a quote now that came from the Darkingham Lands Council to close this up. And they said this is our land, no one can tell us what to do, and we'll do what we want. That doesn't sound like what the Guring-gai was saying.
Absolutely opposite.
They are the opposites.
And they're the traditional custodians. And the Darkingham Land Council are all from outside the area.
Auntie Bev was the last full descent Darkingham elder.
Yes,
They have none. The Guring-gai should be stepping up now because they do have traditional
that's
people.
what they're starting to do because
They
they feel the rest of the community, the rest are starting to respect and honour them, and they feel supported.
Yeah.
Because for so many years there was only a couple of them, and they were so unsupported.
And they were so attacked.
Absolutely,
And vilified and
attacked
threatened.
all the time.
Threatened.
Look how our colleague is being attacked. Anyone that speaks out against her, they attack them. I say, don't feed the monster, because that's what they are. And every time we react and get upset with them, we're feeding this big monster.
And then they come back and do it again.
And then they come back because we're giving them more fuel.
And that
ignore them and
it
get on
becomes
with
a
what we're
cycle.
doing. And
There's
I
a
think
great saying, don't stare into the abyss because we'll stare back at you.
yeah, right on. And so I just sort of think everyone's been amazing. I feel supported more than at any time once Auntie Bev left, because I really felt like, but this site up there will not leave us alone. It'll sort of go rest for a while, and then it just rears up again.
I walked away from it.
How many years has it been going? Thanks so much, though, Steve. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nina.